Good morning, Saitlanders. How are you? We hope that you're well, or as well as can be expected under trying circumstances. Today is Tuesday, the 26th of May, day 61 of our lockdown. And I want to talk to you briefly, as briefly as possible, about the rumors doing the rounds concerning a fuel shortage in South Africa. To cut a long story short, there are hiccups in distribution, but the general narrative that there is a crisis is a huge exaggeration. Stories came out about somebody couldn't find fuel in Kakamas, and somebody else couldn't find fuel in Kenton-on-Sea, and somebody else couldn't find fuel in Kingsborough, and so on. Here's the story. In Durban, the gantries that you will have heard about are irrelevant. The gantries are never used. There is a buoy, you know, those things that float in the sea, about the size of a large house. I've been to it. I've paddled out to it as a young lifesaver. About the size of a large house, 2.5 kilometers offshore of the Bluff. For those of you who don't know, that part of Durban that is called the Bluff is named for the Bluff. It's a bluff when there's a huge sand dune at the coastline, a ginormous sand dune, many thousands of years old, I'm sure. And offshore of the Bluff, south of Durban, near Wentworth, near Reunion, near Isipingo, is this buoy. It's called the SBM, the single buoy mooring, where ships from countries that drill oil, pump oil, come and they pump the contents of those oil supertankers into the SBM, the single buoy mooring, and it goes down to the seabed and then runs along the seabed, that is to say a pipeline, to Sapref and Engen, the big refineries south of Durban. As I said, Wentworth, Reunion, going towards the Isipingo. Any of you who've ever traveled to the south coast of Natal via the N3 down to Durban and then onto the N2 southwards, the Bluff, Amanzimtoti, Warner Beach, Illovo, Caridine, Mgababa, Scottborough, Mtwalume, Ifafa, Mfazazana, Port Shepstone, Port Edward, with Margate, Ramsgate, and Southbroom on the way. Turton, Mtwalume, did I say Mtwalume? Will have seen on the left-hand side as you're traveling southwards, just south of Durban, as you're on your way on the N2, southward on your holiday, the petrol refineries, Engen and Shell and BP. Right. The fuel goes from the ship to the single buoy mooring to those petrol refineries where the oil, the crude oil, olie, is refined, and then it is then pumped also via pipelines all the way from Durban to Gauteng, where it is then distributed, the majority of it. Of course, some is used in Natal, but the majority destination is Gauteng. Right, so the gantries not being operated in Durban Harbour is just rubbish. It's just a complete rank lie. The problem with social distancing, the ships and what have you, is rubbish. It's complete nonsense. Those ships are 2.5 kilometers away from the shore. Never mind the first man closest to them in the refinery on the other side of the Bluff. It's rubbish. And that is working 100%. We have very good sources in Amanzimtoti and our Bluff group, and they've given us the correct information. Furthermore, this very morning, one of our West Rand leaders spoke to one of the senior engineers on the pipeline from Durban to Gauteng. And he said, we're going full taps. Full taps. Everything is running as it should be. We also know that 3 weeks ago, could be 4 weeks ago now, Sasol shut down production. It had been shutting down production slightly, or gradually, I should say. And by 4 weeks ago, it had to shut down completely. What was the problem? Too much. Not too little, too much fuel. In other words, all of their storage facilities were full. They've been working their way through that excess of stockpiled fuel, and they are slowly bringing their various production facilities online. As recently as Friday, 2 of the production lines, if that's the correct term, were running, and yesterday a third one came back online, is working out of 4. So why is it then that people are reporting shortages of diesel or fuel, that is to say diesel or petrol and diesel across South Africa or in various locations? It's really very simple. The system, the distribution system, was never designed to compensate for 8 or 9 weeks of stagnation in 72 hours. You're going to experience the same thing next Monday when Tops and Rebel and United Liquors and the rest reopen. There's going to be 9 weeks of thirst to attempt to satisfy in a very short span of time, and there will be shortages of liquor. This is a fact. You can bet your bottom dollar on it. It's guaranteed. The liquor distribution system of South Africa was never designed to be able to satisfy 9 weeks of thirst in 24 hours or 48 hours or 72 hours. And the stocks held by Tops and by Andre Coetzee Bottle Store and others were never intended to compensate for 9 weeks of thirst or of 9 weeks of no drinking. It was bound to happen that there would be fuel shortages. Of course, you know, Kuni Maria and I spoke this morning. He spoke with Ernst van den Berg early this morning, and then when he rang me, Mr. Miller rang him to speak about this subject, and then he and I carried on with our conversation. We are exposed to a lot of information, and in some cases processed information, verified and processed information, that is to say intelligence, which we can't always share. It just doesn't work that way. And Kuni and I were discussing it this morning, and you know, the reality is that sometimes we have to be restrained. Sometimes we can't afford to get carried away just in case things don't turn out the way that we expect them to. But trust me, we're exposed to great intelligence and we have a fair idea of what is cooking. For instance, you may be interested to know that Eskom has used its prerogative to demand an enormous amount of diesel at very short notice. I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I presume that it's for the open cycle gas turbines at Atlantis, not far from Koeberg. And I presume that they may be anticipating an increased demand during this cold spell that we're experiencing today and for the rest of this week. And I've certainly seen weather forecasts, you know, long-range forecasts, stating that, for instance, in the Northern Cape, Southern Free State, Northwest, and there was one other region, I can't think of it now, this will be one of the coldest winters for many, many years. Perhaps Eskom is preparing for that. When they withdraw that enormous amount of diesel out of a system that is already struggling to distribute the abundance of stockpiles that it does possess, then, of course, you may see it at the pumps, that there is a shortage at some petrol stations, those that haven't been replenished yet, those that are further down the list, those that are not preferred customers, or perhaps those that had not stockpiled. And of course, I'm sure I'm not alone in telling you the following anecdote. I'm in Johannesburg at the moment. I've come up here to be nearer to my sons during this unclear, difficult, uncertain period. There's a place down the road from where I'm renting, a petrol station, that I had a chat with the people there. They're desperate to sell fuel, absolutely desperate. They have enormous quantities of diesel. Now, I could go to the petrol station or the fuel station 4 kilometers in that direction and perhaps not find any, or see that it is closed, which it is. But if I drive 2.5 kilometers in that direction, there's too much diesel. They're pleading with people to buy. They've got it on special. 12 Rand 38. It's the best price I've seen anyway. So there you go, guys. Thank you very much for listening to this long video. We trust that it will have calmed some of you down who might have been concerned by the fake news or the exaggerated news or the hysterical tone of the messages being distributed on social media. Friends and relatives, send it to them too, that they may know the truth. If anything changes, we assure you, you will be the first to know. All right then. Have a good day. Bye-bye.